Hello, Namaste, Konnichiwa, welcome to Sane Sensei. In this lesson, I'll be talking about why analysis, a problem-solving approach that comes from Japan, the land of rising sun. I've divided the lesson in two sections. Section 1 introduces why analysis. We study the basics using an example. Section 2 has a case study that is based on a real-life event, a chemical leak at a factory in Japan. We will understand the practical aspects of why analysis. Let's start with Section 1, the basics. So, what is why analysis? Why analysis is a technique, an approach that is used to solve problems, any kind of problems at work. Let me give you some examples. The project is delayed by 2 months. Delay is expensive, not good. The customer found critical bugs in the software. Bugs. We have a very unhappy customer here. Accidental fire in a factory. Definitely a huge problem. And problems at home. Extremely serious problems. My dog hates me. Why can help us fix all these problems? Well, not all, but most of them. Let me explain further. For the first problem, delay in project, solution is simple. We secure additional budget, we deploy more resources, we expedite the project, and we are back on track. All is good. The software bugs. Just fix the bugs, update the software, and we are done. The fire. Simply replace the damaged stuff, and we are good to go. The dog hates me. Buy the dog a new hat. This is quite simple, right? No, it is not. These are just quick fixes. Solutions that might work in short term but will not avoid a repeat of similar problems. Similar incidents will definitely happen again. Here is one more example. This tree with beautiful red apples, except this one. It is purple, a bad apple. Not a big problem. It is just one bad apple. We pluck it and throw it away. All the other apples are fine. We have fixed the problem. Not really. Throwing away the bad apple is a quick fix. It works for now, but we will not be able to prevent other good red apples from turning purple later. We might end up with something like this. No, this is not what we want. Not at all. Let's go back to where we were. We should analyze the current situation, understand the reason behind that one bad purple apple, and figure out a way to prevent this from happening to other good red apples. Similarly, for this quick fix, we got the project back on the track, but without knowing the real reason behind the delay, we might end up with a similar situation once again. Another delay is most likely. The software bugs. We fixed the bugs, but we still don't know how these bugs escaped our quality control process. This will definitely happen again. The fire. We fixed the equipment, but what caused the fire? We still don't know that. The risk is still there. The fire might happen again some other day. Finally, the dog. I simply assume that my dog wants a new hat. Maybe the dog wants a new pair of shoes. I never discussed the issue with the dog. In short term, quick fixes might work, but will not prevent a reoccurrence of the issues. Let me get rid of these. A single bad purple apple on the tree and these 4 incidents are problems. Problems as we see them. These are just the symptoms. We need to dig deeper into the ground. Deep dive into the problems and conduct a thorough investigation. This is definitely not an easy task, but don't worry. We have the why analysis to help us out. It is a framework to systematically and logically analyze a situation. The goal is to identify the real problem, the root cause. Quick fixes focus only on symptoms. Quick fixes are only short-term solutions. But if we fix the root cause, we can prevent the problems from reoccurring. We have a long-term solution. Why analysis is all about asking questions. Questions with a why. Why, and why until we find the root cause. Let me explain using an example. We will start with the stakeholders, a family of 3, a father, a mother, and a child. The father bought this phone last week. Looks quite expensive, but today the screen is shattered. The phone is damaged, a huge loss. The father's phone is damaged. This is our starting point. The problem statement. A quick fix will be to get the phone repaired. If that's not possible, just buy a new phone. The problem is fixed. No, this is not what we want. The goal is to find the root cause. Why did it happen? And what should be done to avoid a repeat? These are the questions that we need the answers for. So instead, we shall apply the why framework. Our first why is, why did the phone break? The phone fell from the table. So, we have a table. The phone was somewhere on the table. It fell and it broke. But why did the phone fall? This is our second why. The child knocked the phone off the table. We still have the table, the phone, and now we know that the child is involved too. Is child the culprit? The root cause? No. The root cause can never be an individual. A single person can never be held responsible for a problem. There is always more than what we can see. Let's explore further. Why did the child knock the phone off the table? Little bit of investigation and we find that the father left the phone at the edge of the table. The table is still the same, but the phone was at the edge. Now we know more about the situation. Can we blame the father for the problem? No. Remember, the root cause can never be an individual. But still, why the child would knock the phone off the table? The phone looks like a toy to the child. Children love toys. The phone was at the edge and it looked like a toy to the child. Are these good enough reasons? No, we have one more. The parents, the father and the mother, didn't realize that the child can reach the top of the table. Kids grow up really fast. Now we have an accurate picture of the problem. The father placed the phone at the edge of the table. The child thought it was a toy, and the child could reach the top of the table. All three of these together are the root causes. Root causes that damaged the phone. If we fix these three root causes, we should be able to avoid a repeat of the problem, the damage to the phone. What we have on the screen right now is the fundamental idea behind why analysis. It always starts with the problem statement, followed by a series of whys. We keep answering the whys until we identify the root cause. Quite simple. Now we delve a little deeper. There are a few rules that we should keep in mind while performing the why analysis. The first one, and the most important one, is to involve all the stakeholders into the process. This requires careful thought. In this example, here are the stakeholders: the father, the mother, and the child. It is easy to identify the father and the child as the stakeholders. It was the father's phone that broke, and it was the child who knocked the phone off the table. What about the mother? Her role is not quite obvious. Remember, both the father and the mother fail to realize that the child can reach the top of the table. Not just that, the mother will definitely play an important role in fixing the root causes. The success of the action plan depends on both the father and the mother. All the stakeholders should be involved to fully understand the circumstances around the problem, to analyze the information correctly, to derive and to implement the countermeasures. Success of why analysis depends on the inclusion of all the stakeholders. Why is all about teamwork. Moving ahead to the second rule, the accuracy of the problem statement. If you get the problem statement wrong, no matter how hard you try, you will reach nowhere. We must know what's broken before we fix it. Quite obvious. Let's go back to our example. Is this an accurate problem statement? It tells us about the issue, but accuracy, not 100%. The father's phone is damaged. We know that, but there is no information about the kind of damage. It was not a minor scratch. The screen was cracked, almost destroyed. Not just this, the child was playing with the broken phone when the mother found it. This information improves our understanding of the problem and is important to correctly proceed with the why analysis. An accurate problem statement is 50% work done. It is critical. It is no surprise that the stakeholders put a lot of effort in correctly defining the problem statement. A good start always helps. Moving ahead, comprehensive response to each why, the third rule. Our answers to the whys should be complete. All possibilities must be covered with zero omissions. How do we do that? Again, let us look at our example. The problem statement says, the father's phone is damaged. Why is the phone damaged? The phone fell from the table. The answer looks fine but lacks context. The background information is missing. The fact that the other stuff on the table was undisturbed is missing. This is important and will make us think harder. Why is that among all the things on the table, it is only the phone that fell and broke? Supplementary information should be added at each step of the why analysis. What was done? What was not done? The good and the bad. Who was involved? The rule is simple. Any background information that helps us with the analysis should be included. Are we good with our first why? Have we covered all the possibilities? No, not really. The possibility of having a protective case for the phone is not captured. With a protective case, the phone might have survived the fall. The phone broke because it fell from the table and because it was without a protective case. A comprehensive and careful assessment of each step is extremely important. Can we go any further into this? Digging further will add little value. We stop here. Lack of protective case is actually one of the root causes. Our fourth root cause. We can continue with the third and the fourth whys. The responses pretty much cover all the possibilities. But the background information is missing. For example, over here, we say that the child knocked the phone off the table. How do we know that? What information helped us reach this conclusion? These details should be included in the analysis. The context is extremely important. But we are not done yet. We should always check the why analysis for logical consistency. Is the problem statement logically connected to the first why? Is there a logical connection between the first why and the second why? And so on. Validation of the logic is very important. While doing the why analysis, we move from the left to the right. From the problem statement to the first why, then to the second why, until we reach the root cause. But for validation, to reconfirm the logic, we don't move from left to the right. Instead, we move from the right to the left, from the end to the start. Starting with the rightmost why. If the phone wasn't at the edge of the table, and if the phone did not look like a toy to the child, and if the parents knew that the child can reach the top of the table, could we have prevented the child from toppling the phone off the table? Yes, we would have. We have validated the logic for the last why. Next, the second why. If the child hadn't knocked the phone off the table, could we have prevented the phone from falling off the table? Yes. The logic works again. Finally, for the first why, if the phone hadn't fallen from the table and the phone had a protective case, could we have prevented the damage to the phone? Again, yes. Yes, yes, and yes. We got a yes at every step from the right to the left. This means our logic is correct, and we have the right root causes. If we can fix these root causes, we can definitely avoid a repeat of the problem. Solid logic at each stage is a must for a successful why analysis. Now let me move to something more fundamental. The number of whys do not matter. Some say that 5 whys is the maximum you should go. No, that's not correct. It could be 2 or it could be 20. Remember, our objective is to find the root causes. We continue until the root causes are established. Simple. If we look at our example, we found one of the root causes pretty quickly with the first why, and the others with the third why. In real life, as per my experience, the number of whys rarely go beyond 10. If they do, please go back and have a relook at the problem statement. A vague or inaccurate problem statement could be the culprit. Let me re-emphasize, our goal is to identify the root causes. Focus on the goal. number of whys is irrelevant. Now that we have the root causes, are we done with the why analysis? No, not yet. The next step, and a very important one, is to list down the countermeasures for each and every root cause. What should we do to prevent these root causes from happening again? After we are done with this, we should prepare a detailed and a robust action plan. Execution is as important as planning. Let me explain. Starting with these root causes, we will find our countermeasures. The first root cause. The father left the phone at the edge of the table. What should we do to avoid this from happening again? We can simply tell the father, never put the phone at the edge of the table. Is this good enough? No, it's not. It's quite vague. Instead, how about this? The phone should be kept in a box between the monitor and the table lamp. This is much better. We have a setup. The location is accurately described between the monitor and the table lamp. Not just that, the box will mark the exact spot where the phone should be kept. Precision helps. This is quite relevant to the real world. I used to work as an engineer. In our laboratory, we had clearly marked locations for all the tools and equipment that we used. This improves efficiency and keeps the place clean and safe. Extremely important. Let's look at the second root cause. The phone looks like a toy to the child. We already have a plan to keep the phone safe, in a box, away from the child. Is there anything else we can do? Let's look at the next root cause first and then come back to this. Father and mother didn't realize that the child can reach the height of the table. Can we do something about this? We have to think beyond the phone. For the second and the third root causes, the countermeasure is identify objects that might attract the child and keep them away from the reach of the child. This is extremely important for the stakeholders, the father, the mother, and the child. It makes sense for them to think beyond the phone. They don't want any other object to be damaged. Child safety is also a concern. Finding of the why analysis should be applied as broadly as possible. Finally, our last root cause. The phone was without the protective case. Here is the countermeasure. Buy protective cases for the father's phone and for the mother's tablet. Protective case for the father was quite obvious, but we went beyond that. We decided to buy a protective case for the mother's tablet also. We must apply the findings as broadly as possible. We have the countermeasures. The next step is to flesh out the action plan. What has to be done? Who is the person responsible? What is the schedule? Be as detailed as possible. Our first countermeasure is phone should be kept in a box between the monitor and the lamp. The action item for this will be buy the box and place it between the monitor and the lamp. This is the task. Mother is the person responsible and she has to complete this task before August 10th. Is this enough? We have the box, but how do we ensure that everyone understands the purpose of the box? Here is the solution. Another task for the mother. We will stick the rule on the wall. This will keep everyone informed. The phone has to go in the box on the table. Let's move to the next countermeasure. Identify objects that might attract the child and keep them away from the reach of the child. This is a lot of work. Let's divide this job between the mother and the father. Father takes care of the living room, and the mother manages the rest of the house. The last countermeasure. Buy protective cases for the father's phone and for the mother's tablet. This is simple. The task is assigned to the father. We are done with the action plan. Don't forget to set up the weekly meetings to monitor the progress. A robust action plan is the key to successful execution. Moving further, another important rule. Never blame an individual. In our example, the father left the phone at the edge of the table, but we never blamed him. The child was involved. The blame is not on the child. Instead, we focused on the process. A new family rule. Everyone must keep the phone in the box on the table. We got a box and kept it on the table. We informed everyone about the rule by putting it on the wall. Our action is not focused on individuals. It is the process, the workflow that matters. Moving to our last point, apply the learnings as broadly as possible. We started with the phone, and we should definitely make sure that the phone is safe in the future. But this is not the end of the story. There are other objects that might attract the child. We are going much beyond the phone. We don't want any more damaged stuff. Safety is also an issue. The idea is simple. We do the why analysis, we find a solution, and then we share the outcome with others. The other projects, the other departments, or the other teams, with anyone who can benefit and learn from our experience. Share to avoid a repeat. With this, we have covered the basics of why analysis. Section 1 is done. But before we move to Section 2, let's review the rules of the game. The 8 golden rules that must be followed while performing the why analysis. Number 1. Carefully identify all the stakeholders and engage them throughout the process. Number 2. Define the problem statement as accurately as possible. Always provide the background information. Number 3. Comprehensive responses to all whys. Leave no gaps. Cover all the possibilities. Once again, it is important to provide background information. What was done? What was not done? Who was involved? Provide as much background information as possible. Number 4. Validate the logical connect between all the whys. Start from the last why and move backwards, while confirming the logic at each step. Number 5. Number of whys do not matter. Continue until you identify the root causes. Number 6. Countermeasures with detailed action plan. For each action item, define the task, identify the person responsible, and define the schedule. Track the progress carefully until the objectives are met. Number 7. Never blame an individual. We should focus on the process, the workflow. And finally, apply the learnings as broadly as possible. Share the outcome of why analysis with others. We don't want similar problems elsewhere. These 8 rules is all you need for a successful why analysis. How do people apply these rules in real life? We have a case study here, a case study that is based on a real life incident. So, what happened? It was a chemical leak that happened on 11th July 2012. Where did it happen? It happened in Toyota City. Yes, Toyota City, the birthplace of Toyota cars, at a facility run by Japan Environment Storage and Safety Corporation, or JESCO. JESCO is owned by the Japanese government and works on the treatment of PCB wastes. And finally, what is the source of information that I used for this case study? It is all public information available at JESCO's website and Toyota City's official website. The original content, all of it, is in Japanese. I translated that into English, trying to be as accurate as possible. You can find all the references in the description box. Let's get into the details. This is the basic setup of the facility run by JESCO in Toyota City. This is a simplified representation, but I think this is good enough for our purpose. Let me explain further. This is a SD storage tank. SD is sodium dispersion. It is metallic sodium dispersed in oil, a chemical that is used in the treatment of PCB waste. If you want to know more, please check out the links in the description box. This is a drain pot, a much smaller container. And we have a system of pipes and valves, V1, V2, V7, V8, V9, and V10. These valves control the flow of chemicals. An open valve allows the chemicals to flow through it. A closed valve will not. Here is what happened. The sequence of events that led to the accident. On 11th July 2012 at 9:30 a.m., a tanker loaded with SD arrives at the facility. The workers connect the tank to the facility and prepare to transfer the SD from the tank to the storage tank. Once the setup is done, At 10:10 a.m., the transfer of SD from the tanker to the storage tank starts. This was the expected flow of chemicals from the tanker through V1 and V2 to the storage tank. But this is what actually happened. The chemical went through V2, V8, V9. It filled the drain pot and then leaked to the ground through V10. V8, V9 and V10 were open and no one was aware about this. The leak was detected at 11:28 a.m., more than an hour after the start of the transfer. 23 liters of leaked SD was recovered from the floor. Thankfully, no one was injured and there was no environmental impact. Still, this was a major accident. JESCO had to take some actions to avoid a repeat. This is the YY done by JESCO, the original document in Japanese. Just look at the scale. It is huge. Some people claim that YY analysis can find root causes in 5 minutes. No, that's not true. It's hard work and takes a lot of time. Days, weeks, and sometimes even months. Life is never easy. To keep the lesson short, I will be focusing only on a small part of the analysis. This will be enough for me to cover the basics. Let's translate this into English. This is what happened. The problem statement. JESCO labeled this as an event. In any case, this is our starting point. SD leak from the drain pot. This is our problem statement. It tells us that there was a SD leak and this leak happened from the drain pot. Quite accurate. It also provides us some additional information. There were 2 sets of safety manual at the site. Again, relevant information. This is a safety-related accident. Going back to our 8 rules, we can confidently check our second rule. This is an accurate problem statement. Moving to the first why. Why did the SD leak from the drain pot? SD leaked from the drain pot because V10 was open. This is not the only answer to this why. Remember, we are looking at only a small portion of the overall analysis. Let's look at all the responses to the first why, one by one. SD leaked from the drain pot because V10 was open. This led the chemical flow from the drain pot to the floor. And because V8, V9 were open. This diverted the flow of SD from the tanker to the drain pot. And because the workers did not realize that V8 and V9 were open. If they had, they could have prevented the accident by closing these 2 valves. Not just that, SD leaked from the drain pot because no one noticed the leak until it was too late. The leak continued for more than an hour. The delay in detection is also a reason. All these answers are included in the YY analysis done by JESCO. Pretty comprehensive. Let's go back to our rules. Rule 3 is clearly satisfied. Comprehensive response to every why. Going ahead, I will limit myself only to the first response. Let's look at the next why. The second why. Why was V10 open? V10 was open because it was not closed at the start of the activity. This was confirmed by one of the workers. But why wasn't it closed at the start? The third why. It wasn't closed because this was not included in the work manual. This gives us our next why. Why number 4. Why was the instruction to close V10 not included in the work manual? We have multiple answers. 1, 2, and 3. Let's look at each one of these. The first response is, if V8, V9 are closed, then the status of V10 doesn't matter. We simply ignore V10. Indeed, if V8 and V9 were closed, the chemical will never reach the drain pot. V10 will not matter. It was assumed that V8 and V9 will be closed before the transfer of SD starts. But unfortunately, this is not what happened. V8 and V9 were open, and so was V10. Moving to the second response. Observation from the deck was the focus. V10 was on the ground and was ignored. Let me explain. Actually, the facility had an observation deck raised above the ground. The workers worked and observed the process from this deck. The valve V10 was on the ground. Out of sight and out of mind. It was simply ignored. Finally, the last response. Leak from V10 was unexpected. No one could relate V10 to the transfer of SD. V10 looked irrelevant. Chances of leakage from V10 was assumed to be zero. The effort to cover all possibilities is quite evident. Once again, rule number 3. Comprehensive response to each why holds true. Let's move ahead. Why 4 is the last why. We don't have any further whys. Why not? Let me explain. The decision to stop is a collective decision, a decision that involves all the stakeholders. Remember, we are not looking for flaws in individuals. Individuals do not matter. We are looking for gaps, systematic gaps in the workflow, gaps in our understanding of a given situation, gaps in communication. The point at which we clearly see these gaps, we stop. The gap is the root cause. Going back to our example, these 3 are the root causes. No one understood the role of V10. This is a gap in our understanding. We need to fix it. These are the preventive actions or the countermeasures. Let's look into the details. The first countermeasure is add to the manual. Close V10 before starting the transfer of SD. This action is mapped to the top 2 root causes. V10 matters. We cannot ignore V10. The workers have to close it at the start. Quite straightforward. But notice this additional statement. Are there any other open valves? Clearly, this is an effort to go beyond V10, the immediate problem, and to identify other problems in the system. This maps to our rule number 8. Apply the learnings as broadly as possible. Moving to the third root cause. The preventive action is add purpose of work to the manual. This is important. No one expected a leak from V10. The workers had no idea what V10 is for. The work manual should specify what has to be done. Close V10. Pretty obvious. But also why it has to be done. Why do we need to close V10? The clarity of purpose is equally important. Till now, we looked only at a small portion of the overall why analysis, and we found these 2 preventive actions. The complete list is actually quite long. Let's have a look. JESCO categorized the action item into 2. Actions to prevent leakage and actions to detect leakage as early as possible. Both of these are important. If you look at this incident, the chemical leak happened because of mistakes in the setup. Some valves that were supposed to be closed were left open. But that's not all. No one noticed the leak until it was too late. Leakage was detected 1 hour after the transfer was started. This definitely aggravated the problem. It makes a lot of sense to figure out how to avoid leaks. And worst case, even after all our efforts, if a leak happens, how to detect the leak as early as possible. I will start with the first set of actions. Actions for leakage prevention. The first point is improve training. Education for employees to ensure that all the actions are performed as per the work manual. There was a work manual at the site. It had step-by-step instruction on what has to be done, how it has to be done, but the manual was handed over to a trainee. Yes, there was a trainee at the site too. And the workers went about their business relying on their memory. The objective of this action item is to educate the workers. Educate them on the importance of following the work manual. The workers must follow the work manual while doing their work. Next, prevent V1 and V9 from opening simultaneously by a change in the design. Let me explain. V1 connects a tanker to the SD storage tank, and V9 connects a tanker to the drain pot. When we are transferring SD from the tanker to the storage tank, only V1 should be open. and V9 should be closed. This was mentioned in the work manual. The workers ignored the manual and this accident happened. JESCO will educate the workers about the work manual, the first point. This is important. But JESCO went a step further. The engineers at JESCO came up with this innovative solution. A handle that connects to both V1 and V9 and will not allow workers to open V1 and V9 at the same time. V9 has to be closed before opening V1. Quite effective. Going ahead to point number 3, update the work manual. There were two people involved in the operation, a supervisor and the worker. There was a lack of clarity on the roles and the responsibilities. This was one of the root causes. So, the first update to the manual is clearly specify the roles and responsibilities of the worker and the supervisor. Next, JESCO added a check sheet to the manual. After each step, the check sheet has to be updated. The idea is to ensure that the workers follow the work manual. Next update is the job of transferring the SD from the tanker to the SD storage has a total of 90 steps. 90 steps in one go. Start with step 1 and go till step 90. And then you are done. This has to be changed. The 90 steps were divided into 6 stages. And the status of the valves, open or close, has to be checked after every stage. Not just this, a second person has to revalidate the status of the valves. If the worker does the initial check, the supervisor has to reconfirm, double check. Finally, it was decided to use bright red color tags to indicate the status of the valves, open or close. This is a picture from a report from Toyota City. Actually, the workers were finding it hard to confirm the status, open or close, of these valves. These tags are designed to make things easier. The language here is Japanese. Let me help you out. The left tag here says V1 is open, and the right one says V2 is open. Moving further, we have OJT, on-job training. Actually, there were 3 people on the site: a worker, a supervisor, and a trainee. The trainee was on OJT, on-job training. There was only one work manual, and this was handed over to the trainee for his reference. The worker and the supervisor did not refer to the work manual at all. This was one of the root causes. So, it was decided to have a separate work manual for the trainee. The OJT should not impact the operations. Finally, the last point. The task of transferring the SD from the tanker to the SD storage tank was performed by a vendor. Going ahead, it was decided that the members of JESCO will also be present during the transfer. They will also be checking the status of the valves after each stage, an extra round of checks to ensure safety. With this, we have covered the action plan for leakage prevention. Moving ahead to the second set of actions. Actions for early leak detection. Action number 1. Let me explain this. A large tray was placed around the drain pot. This tray is fitted with a sensor that can detect leakage. If there is a leak, the SD will be collected in this tray. The sensor will detect the leak and trigger an alarm. Indeed, an effective step to detect a leak. Moving to action number 2. The workers were keeping an eye on the process from the observation deck. This deck was raised above the ground. The position of the deck made it impossible to detect the leak happening at the ground level. The view was blocked by the tanker. As a countermeasure, changes were made to the work manual. The workers will now have to come down from the observation deck and check for leakage around the ground installations. Installation of the tray and the sensors is good, but the system can still fail. Equipments can still potentially fail. It is good to have a second level of check by the workers. This makes the overall solution much more robust. We have covered the entire list of actions taken by JESCO. Actions to prevent leakage and actions to detect leakage. Going back to our list of YY rules. This case study is already aligned to some of the rules. Let's look at the remaining rules. Rule number 6 is definitely satisfied. Countermeasures, as I just explained, are well defined and are also backed by solid action plan. We are good with Rule 6. We went through the complete set of countermeasures and action plan. Nowhere is any individual blamed. The focus is on the process, the training, the work manual, improvements in design, and so on. So, rule number 7, never blame an individual, is also satisfied. We still have few unchecked rules. The first rule, involve all the stakeholders. Stakeholders. Those involved directly in this incident are clearly involved in the YY analysis. We can find multiple references to the supervisor and the worker in the documentation of this YY analysis. JESCO as an organization is also deeply involved. They also have an important role in the implementation of the action plan. A lot of information for this case study comes from the website of Toyota City. This shows that the local government of Toyota City is also involved in the process. This accident could have led to a bigger disaster. The involvement of local government totally makes sense. Finally, all the information about this incident is in the public domain. Anyone can access this, read it, and learn from it. Public is definitely involved. Stakeholders, both direct and indirect, are involved in this YY analysis. Rule 1 holds. The fourth rule says, validate the logical connect between the whys. As far as I know, since 2012, there has been no repeat. Never again an incident involving a chemical leak was reported by JESCO. YY was effective. Root causes were correctly identified. This will only happen if the logic from the problem statement to the root causes is correct. So we can safely assume that the rule number 4 holds good. We are still left with one rule. Rule number 5. The number of whys do not matter. This is absolutely true. One branch of the YY analysis goes till the 7th why. But there are also branches that identify root causes at why number 3, why number 4, and why number 5. The number of whys do not matter. There are some who claim that we need a maximum of 5 whys. 5 whys to identify the root causes. This is not true. This example from Japan, from Toyota City, the birthplace of YY analysis, proves them wrong. Before we conclude this lesson, I must say, YY is hard work. It's hard, it's time consuming. But if we do it well, it saves a lot of time and money in the future. A such in time definitely saves 9. If you enjoyed this lesson, like the video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment below. Thank you so much.